shrink paychecks, and higher taxes on gas, groceries, and heat. Why won't they cancel these tax hikes so that Canadians can keep a roof over their heads?
The Honourable Minister.
Can't even afford to have a family in the first place because they can't get out of their parents' basements or out of 400-square-foot apartments after housing prices have literally doubled in this country under this Prime Minister. And now, with rising interest rates, which this government promised would not happen anytime soon, families have to spend 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their head, the highest in over 3 decades. And the solution from the Liberals? Higher taxes on gas, groceries, and paychecks. Will they follow the Conservative demand and cancel all of these tax hikes on workers and seniors?
The Honourable Minister.
Absolutely focused on the issue of housing affordability in this country. That is why we've put forward real solutions like the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is about increasing more housing supply. It's about also turning more Canadian renters into homeowners. It's about introducing the first-time homebuyer tax credit and putting in place a first-time homebuyer savings account to enable more young Canadians and others to access their dream of home ownership. We can't take the leader of the opposition seriously on these issues because on every single tangible solution that we've brought forward that actually works, he's voted against it.
Leader of the Opposition.
They've worked to double the price of housing in this country and give us the second worst housing bubble of any country on planet Earth. Now, Canadians have had the cost they must pay for monthly housing bills go from 32% of their paycheck to 50% of their paycheck. And what's the Prime Minister's solution? To reduce their paychecks by taking a bigger bite out of them with higher payroll taxes. And he wants to raise gas taxes, home heating taxes, and indirectly the price of groceries by tripling the carbon tax. Will the government cancel these tax hikes so that Canadians can afford to eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, over the course of this session, you're going to see two competing visions. One, which shows our government doing what needs to be done for Canadians as they are facing higher inflation, and the other vision...
livestock as well. Fishers are losing boats, wharfs, and other critical infrastructure. And traditional bureaucratic government programs are very slow to respond. What will the government do to speed up a response to help those who feed all of us get back on their feet?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as early as last Tuesday, we started working with local communities on the ground, provincial leadership to prepare for what we knew would be a big storm coming. And indeed, when the storm hit, we were connecting immediately with premiers, with municipalities, with Indigenous leaders to make sure they were getting all the support they have and they need. We will continue to be there as a federal government with immediate supports, with the military where it's needed, with investments in the short term, but we will also be there over the medium and indeed long term as people rebuild, as we support the people who work so hard to keep us fed and supported.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Nova Scotia Power reported that the ArriveCan app blocked American crews that were trying to rush into the province to help with the recovery response and wasted valuable time. Originally, the Public Safety Minister denied that that had happened, but only to be contradicted by the Emergency Preparedness Minister, who said, in fact, there was an issue at the border. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister suspend the ArriveCan app today, not Saturday, so that no more holdups happen at the border for those who are trying to help those in desperate need?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Obviously, Mr. Speaker, everyone's focus was on getting support to affected areas as quickly as possible. I myself saw off an Ottawa Hydro crew heading out to Nova Scotia to help out. We know how important it is that people get across the border quickly, and I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that there were no delays at any border because of ArriveCan or otherwise.
taxes on the working poor. And yet that is exactly what the minister admits she will do. She admits that raising the EI premiums, the EI payroll taxes, will take $2.5 billion extra dollars out of the hands of Canadian workers, and not to fund EI. She also admits through her own public filings that the government will take $10 billion more in EI taxes than it will pay out in benefits, money that the Prime Minister will raid from the account and spend however he likes. Will the Prime Minister get his hands off the EI fund and the paychecks of our workers?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the EI contribution rate today is 1.58. Next year, it'll go up to $1.63. Both of those rates are lower than the EI contribution rate was in every single year when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister. Yet the new Conservative leader, who was actually the employment minister during those years, now wants to slash our contributions. So who do the Conservatives think was the better economic manager, Prime Minister Harper or their new leader?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, we were terrific economic managers together, and we will be again. So I'm just getting a little practice in on answering questions, Mr. Speaker. We'll be doing more of it when we're in government soon. But in fact, EI payments have gone up for the average $60,000 a year worker from $930 when I was the minister to $948 now. That's a small increase, but the big $2.5 billion tax increase is just ahead. This minister admits the money won't even go to EI. It'll go to government spending. Why won't they get their hands off the EI fund and the paychecks of our workers?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, a Canadian earning $49,500 a year paid $931 in EI premiums. Next year, that same Canadian will pay $807. That's nearly $125 less than she paid when the Conservative leader was the minister in charge. So, yet again, Mr. Speaker, Canadians really need to understand whose policies do Conservatives support, Stephen Harper's or their new leaders?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And both. And the total payroll tax of a $60,000 a year earner went from $3,400 under the previous Conservative government to $4,168 today. And the reality is, none of that was necessary, and they want to use the money for anything but EI. Mr. Speaker, on top of that, now they plan to triple the carbon tax, raising gas, heat, and grocery costs, and killing jobs for many people in many sectors. Their policy is paychecks down and costs up. And in fairness, they're succeeding at both. Will they stop that policy and cancel their tax hikes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've already explained that Canadians earning around $50,000 a year next year will pay $125 less in EI premiums. But now I want Conservatives to come clean on what they want to do to our pensions. Their proposal is an irresponsible scheme to eviscerate our pensions. As Rob Carrick pointed out, quote, Canada pension plan premiums are not a tax. The CPP is the bedrock of a Canadian retirement plan. The Conservatives want to undermine all of our pensions, but we won't let them.
The Leader of the Opposition.
That is absolutely false. Conservatives protected the CPP, increased benefits for seniors every single year we were in office, and did it without any tax increases at all. We can do that again. Everybody agrees we should keep contributing. Nobody agrees that we have to hike taxes on workers to do it. But back to the carbon tax. They want to triple this tax on groceries, gas, and heat at a time when Canadians can barely afford to pay their bills. They want to add 40 cents a litre to gas taxes right now with 40-year high inflation. Will the government cancel this tax on Canadian energy?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's get serious. Canadians know this Conservative leader does not have a serious climate plan, and that means he doesn't have a serious economic plan. The economic reality is our most important trading partners, the U.S., the EU, our customers, our markets, are all taking aggressive climate action. Canada cannot afford to fall behind. Our economy cannot afford it.
Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, as usual, the Conservatives don't appear to want to see the facts. The facts are that so far, the federal government has been posting a surplus of $6.3 billion. And the forecast is that Canada will have the lowest deficit of the G7. We will have the lowest GDP, debt to GDP ratio, and this should continue this year. The Leader of the Opposition.
More debt than all previous Canadian prime ministers combined. Doubled the national debt. Those inflationary deficits have bid up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest we pay. And now, according to the parliamentary budget officer, we will have to pay twice as much for interest on that national debt, $46 billion, more than the cost of the entire Canadian military. Liberal solution? Higher taxes on paychecks, gas, groceries, and other expenses. Why won't the government cap spending, cut waste, so that it can cancel its inflationary deficits and taxes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as usual, the Conservatives aren't bothering to even acquaint themselves with the facts. Had they bothered to read the latest fiscal monitor, they would know that so far this fiscal year, the federal government is actually running a surplus of $6.3 billion. The IMF forecasts that Canada will have the lowest deficit in the G7 this year. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7 this year, and our AAA credit rating was reaffirmed earlier this year. We believe in fiscal responsibility, and that's what we're demonstrating.
Canadians must spend on national debt interest, and they're tripling the carbon tax. Tripling that tax on gas, heat, groceries, and basically every good that has to be transported from one place to another. Now at a time with 40-year highs in inflation, Liberals want to raise those taxes even further. Our young people who are going to school are living in homeless shelters because they cannot afford the cost of living. Will this government cancel this heartless tax increase?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, for middle-class Canadians, we have cut taxes and made them better off. Today, a single parent in Ontario with 2 kids under 6 and earning $60,000 a year pays nearly $5,600 less in taxes than she did under the Conservatives. And she'll receive nearly $8,900 more through reduced child care fees and the dental benefit. She will be more than $14,400 better off than she was under the Conservatives.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the Liberals would tell Canadians they've never had it so good. They've never had it so good. Listen, this government is out of touch and Canadians are out of money. Here are the facts. The food bank use triples, hits record almost every month. Daily Bread Food Bank. GTA food banks say they're facing the highest demand in their history. Inflation is driving Ottawa Food Bank to record heights with no end in sight, and students are literally living in homeless shelters while they go to school. And the Liberals think now is the time to raise their energy costs by tripling the carbon tax. Will they cancel this heartless tax hike now?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know who's out of touch, Mr. Speaker? A Conservative leader who thinks now is a good time to slash pension savings. The reckless Conservative scheme would cost $3.8 billion a year. So that means the Conservatives are either planning to increase our deficit by $3.8 billion a year or slash the retirement income of our seniors. They need to come clean. Do they plan to slash pensions, increase the deficit, or did they just not bother to think that far ahead?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The answer is neither. Just like when we were in government, we froze CPP taxes and we protected the CPP, increasing its benefits to seniors every single year we were in office. Now, this government wants to raise taxes on those very same seniors. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, in every single province where the carbon tax applies, Canadians pay more in costs than they get back in rebates. And it is especially high in provinces like Quebec, where there is no rebate whatsoever, but will have to pay the increased costs the government is imposing. Will this government cancel this heartless tax hike today?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Talk about a centerpiece of the Conservative economic agenda. Recently, the member for Kingston and the Islands asked the Conservative leader directly if he was finally ready to flip-flop on cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. In response, the Conservative leader couldn't even bring himself to utter the words crypto or Bitcoin. Maybe that's because since he offered his reckless advice, Bitcoin has fallen by 56%. It's time for the Conservative leader to apologize to those Canadians who made the mistake of listening to him.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I borrowed some lemons from the Governor General, so I owe her quite a bit for those lemon wedges. But what's more humanitarian, Mr. Speaker? Welcoming tens of thousands of asylum seekers in distress, knowing that the majority risk deportation when they had time to settle in Quebec, or is it better to invest $2 billion in qualified staff at the Immigration Department in requiring asylum seekers to come across a proper border crossing and reducing delays? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we believe in the strength of our asylum system and our immigration system. We work very closely with all stakeholders on the issues at our border. We always work very closely with our partners to respect our domestic and international obligations when it comes to refugee claimants. We will continue to do. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Government, the Liberals have no climate plan. What they have is a tax plan that has failed to reach a single solitary environmental target that they have set. Meanwhile, gas prices have hit $2.40 a litre in Vancouver. This is the same city which is the third most overpriced real estate market on Earth. In other words, people can't afford to drive, they can't afford homes, and with food prices rising faster than in 40 years, they can't afford to eat either. Will the government show some compassion for British Columbians and Canadians and cancel its plan to triple the tax?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives don't have a climate plan. All they have is a plan to take away $1,000 checks from families in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And you know what? They don't have a plan to make life more affordable for Canadians either. All they have is a plan to drain our pensions and our EI. Our government does have a fiscally responsible plan to support Canadians with affordability, and we have a plan to act on the climate. Canadians know that, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The only ones draining EI of money is this government. They want to raid the EI fund for $10 billion. Take the money that Canadians pay in EI taxes and spend it on everything but EI. The minister admits she's going to raise EI taxes by $2.5 billion starting on January 1st. With Canadians facing the highest inflation in 40 years, just inflation, with Canadians struggling to feed themselves, what is this government thinking by raising taxes on paychecks?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when you look past all the huffing and puffing, all the strutting and posturing, here's what's happened this week. The Conservatives have done a U-turn and accepted our targeted and fiscally responsible plan to help 11 million vulnerable Canadian families with GST rebates of nearly $500. Now it's time for the Conservatives to drop their utterly reckless scheme to drain our pensions and EI, and to support our plan to help Canadians pay their rent and take their kids to the dentist.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The government has been draining the paychecks and pocketbooks of Canadians. Just this week, the Angus Reid Institute published a poll showing that 51% of Canadians are struggling to eat. In Canada, a G7 country, the majority of people cannot afford groceries. That is 7 years of this Liberal government. Canadians are out of money. This government is out of touch. Why won't they cancel their tax hikes so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, you know who's out of touch? The people who are out of touch are a party that believes it's a good idea to slash our pensions and to undermine the EI system. You know what else is out of touch? It's out of touch not to have a plan to act on climate. And you know why that's out of touch, Mr. Speaker? Because our customers, our clients, the US and the EU, they are taking climate action. They will only buy Canadian products if we take climate action too.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the minister totally ignored the question. 51% of Canadians cannot afford to eat. Food bank use has tripled and hits record every single month, according to the Daily Bread Association. Students are living in homeless shelters while they study. This is Canada. After 7 years of this Liberal government, getting worse now under this costly coalition. Will they wake up to what's going on in this country and cancel their heartless tax hikes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to protecting vulnerable Canadians. Our government has lifted hundreds of thousands of Canadian children out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. We have lifted seniors out of poverty by increasing the OAS and by reversing the ruthless, cruel Conservative pension cuts. You know who owes Canadians an apology, Mr. Speaker? It is this new Conservative leader who recklessly advised them to destroy their life savings by investing in Bitcoin.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, Roxham Road is challenging the numbers, the Liberal failures, the cultural integration.